just haphazardly adding a little bit of color just right at the bottom of the petal. Sorry, the lighting is changing. It's a nightmare to add this sort of lighting because it goes from too warm to too cool. But anyways, I hope you're still enjoying this regardless. Okay, and then here right at the bottom, I'm just going to add a bit more color right here. There we go, sun is back. So like that. And I will use the fountain pen to create those spikes later. In fact, we haven't done the spikes here. I will come back to do that. And let's see, so maybe I will just add a bit of color. Let's go with this pinky one, just in some areas like that. Not everywhere, just some petals, also changing up the side of the petal where I'm adding it, like so. Keep in mind these are water soluble, so maybe we'll create something fun. I'll just add a bit of warmth here, just a bit of peach. See what we get. I'll leave it at that for a minute and then I'll start working on the petals. So what I'm going to do is just layer the whole thing and make the ink flow into the tombos. See what happens. The tombos will give us a little bit of color because they're there as a base. And then in some areas we'll have this lovely brown ink come through. So that's a nice little effect here. I think what I will also do is go into these bits here where it's still wet and add a bit more darkness in there. Okay. So with the pen, I'm just going to go in and darken these petals right at the base, touching the wet paper with it. Like that. And that looks quite nice. I'm just going to use the tip of my brush and just dab a little bit of water just to make it kind of swoosh into the paint a bit more, onto the wetness. What I would do is use the other tombow here, the one that is darkest. I mean, it's not the fantastic color in terms of, you know, color matching, but that's all I have and that's what I'm going to work with. And that also can sometimes make you discover things. So you can see now mixing it with the brown of the ink creates a lovely, lovely effect. Again, leaving the highlight somewhere about here. This is a lovely look here with the brown ink mixing with the tombow. Okay, I think that looks gorgeous. Really surprised with this one. I wasn't sure where it's going to go, but it's beautiful. Okay, so I will add also the spiky bits onto here with this pen once it's all fully dry. Let's go back to this one, and I actually prepared this burnt sienna. This is Amsterdam ink, and I'm going to pick the smallest detail brush that I have. I'm trying to think whether that would be a good one. So I've got one here which is a liner, so that could give us longer elements. Just going to wet my brush to make sure it's nice and really pointy, and then I'm going to dab maybe a little drop. I mean, you really need the tiniest amount of this, and then I'm just going to use as much water as I can, otherwise it's too opaque, and then just create these bits, the spiky bits. Immediately it starts to look a lot more like Echinacea. So that's it. I think that's enough here. And gosh, this is beautiful. How stunning is that? Okay, so we have two mediums left. We have gouache that's going to go here, and we've got watercolor that's going to go over here. So for the gouache, I just drew out a more simpler flower, so without overlapping any of the petals, because with gouache it is a bit difficult to create detailed work. So I find that the thicker gouache I use, the more I like it, so less water, and I just like building it up. So for that reason, I decided to simplify as much as I could the drawing and just take it from there. And I'm not anticipating kind of staying within lines. I'll probably overline most of them because it's just going to be impossible. So that's the illustration, and I'm going to kind of turn it around a little bit just to keep it more different. And the sun is out again. Okay, so I have got squeezed out 4 colors here, and these are the Winsor & Newton Designer Gouache in Naples Yellow Deep, Pale Rose Blush, Paraline Maroon, and Rose Tyrienne. So I'm going to swap to a brush. I like to use these sort of filbert shaped brushes, and like I said, I'm just going to wet my brush just to kind of, you know, make it less dry, but I'm not having too much water on there. So I will start by kind of trying to mix a color. So I've got a very dark color here, and then I'm going to add a bit of the yellow, and it sort of looks more browny now, so that's a good color. Now highlights is not really a thing when working with gouache, so it's going to be a different style. I love how quick gouache dries. So when you need a bit of a sharper edge rather than a dry brush mark, that's a good idea to add a bit more water to it, just to make the paint a bit more movable. Okay, so that's our head done. Kind of want to still pull it out a bit more this direction to have that cone shape. It's still not cone enough, is it? Just going to bring it up a bit more. There we go. Now it's that cone shape that we need. And then I'm going to move on to the petals. Now, looking at the petals, I think I might want to mix this pink with a bit of this light pink here and see what we get. That's a good color here. What happens if we add a bit of yellow into it? I think that's nice. So I'm just going to try and painting the leaves, or the petals rather. So I don't want any pencil marks to be visible, and that's why I'm going to kind of go over them. Okay, now onto the next petal. So you can see that sort of flatness of gouache, which is the opposite of watercolor, is quite a satisfying experience, or for me anyway. I'm going to mix up more color now. Okay, and last petal. All right. So in terms of detailing, you could add a bit of darker bits here and there, but with gouache you need to adapt to it. It's a different experience. But what you can do in terms of these little spikes is you can use that yellow here, or a lighter color of your choice, or whichever color you go for. And I'm going to go for a really short bristle brush. So what's this one? Princeton Round 20. So basically it's a 00. And we're going to kind of create a bit of a puddle here, because if it's too thick, it's just going to be blobs. And then I'm going to turn around my sketchbook a little and start adding these spikes. And you can see how much they stand out. So that's our gouache. I wonder what would happen if we try to bring a little bit of darkness into the petal. It kind of makes me think like I would make a mess. But anyway, let's try it. So now if I'm going to take this brush and try to water it out, keeping in mind that gouache is water soluble, so it's going to pick up the color from underneath it. Yeah, I'm not sure I like messing about with it, because the whole point for me to use gouache is to make things simpler, but it does look a little bit better with the extra bit of detail. So what I may do is actually, instead of using water to try and blend it, I think I might just leave it like that, just line it out carefully and leave it. And then the same thing I would do just at the tip. So the mix is not too thick, and that way I can achieve finer detail or lines. Just like that. And actually what I also may like to do is mix up the same sort of color that I had here, like a warmer brown, a bit more pink. And I might use this color in a very watery mix and just go over the petals, creating these sort of veining effects. So something like that. Before I move on to the final bit, which is the watercolor part of it, I'm just going to add these spikes right here. And by the way, I can see a bit of that gold come through, which is ever so slightly shimmering away, and it's just very beautiful. I wonder if you have favorites already. Leave me a comment at the end which one you like the most, or which one you'd like to try. Okay, so let me see if I can show you the glittering. Or the shimmering rather. Okay, so I'll see you in a second.